short word of prayer. Yes.
Thank you for your present help in the time of need, God. Father, we know, God, as we continue, God, along this journey, God, you, God, is going to direct our path, dear God. No one else but you, God. For you are the author and finisher of our faith, dear God. For what you set right, dear God, no one else can make this way, dear God. Father God, I ask that you bless the executive continuously, dear God. Take the lead, dear God, as the lead, dear God, we will follow, dear God. Father, I pray, oh God, as the media said this morning, dear God, you know that whatsoever is that they receive, dear God, is going to deliver, dear God. And I ask that they continue to bless our hearts, our homes, our lives. Enter into our presence, dear God. And anything that is unacceptable, dear God, I pray that depart in the name of Jesus, dear God. Father, I bring the President General before you, God. Father, you know the son better, you know him himself, dear God. And I know he's directed by you, God. So I ask that you continue to hold his hands and lead him in the straight path. To your son is my prayer. Amen. Amen. Amen.
Pleasant good Friday morning to you members of the media, and at the same time welcome you to our press briefing, and of course thank you in advance for this coverage. We call this press conference here this morning to respond to a number of inaccuracies made by the Honorable Minister of Finance, the Honorable Colm, Imbert, yesterday in his press conference with respect to the union's company, Patriotric Energies and Technologies Company Limited. It's been its latest response to his letter with respect to the provision of upfront financing, which has to do with the requirement of US $500 million. So let's just get clear and put in perspective what we want to communicate here this morning. But before we do that, I want to thank the hundreds of thousands of persons, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, who would have met all of us members of the union, all of whom I would have come into contact with, most of them as we traverse the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. These citizens expressing goodwill, expressing hope, wishes, and of course thanking the union for standing up in the defense of the ordinary person, in defense of the man in the street, in defense of the people of Trinidad and Tobago to acquire an asset on behalf of all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And for their prayers and support, and continue to support, this morning I want to publicly thank all of them. You know, it's a fact that our attempt to acquire these assets has had and continue to have widespread national support. That's a fact. And it is only because persons, citizens of this country, see in this attempt, this valiant attempt, an attempt to save an asset for the people. Now, thus far in the history of this country, the ordinary man in the street, the workers, the people who form the lowest round of the economic ladder in the society, generally have nothing to their name, nothing to their credit, cannot claim that they have some form of wealth or wealth generating capacity. The union's attempt is to move the society from one level, the level that many in the minority percentage, that's the 1%, would like all of us, the 99%, to stay in. And the union's attempt is to have us rise out of that, and so that the entire 99% of us will be able to benefit from the fruits of this land. That is the depth of which we were committed to by going at length to try to acquire this asset on behalf of the people. And on diverse occasions, I would have announced point by point how Trinidad and Tobago is going to benefit, how the people is going to benefit, how the youth are going to benefit, how arts and culture is going to benefit, all of which would not benefit if it goes into other hands. So that's the point that we wish to reiterate this morning. But I want to put again in context why we are here at this point in the acquisition. You would recall that in 2019, a request for proposals was sent out for the acquisition of both the port and the refinery at Point of Bear. It has having been shut down in 2018. The union responded, and we were prepared then to pay an upfront payment of some 700 million US. It's a fact. Because what we want to do this morning is to place on the table the facts and have the public, you the public, draw your own conclusions as to whether those who responded to our proposals along the way, as to whether they were genuine or they were not genuine. You make your conclusion. So that we came to the table with a proposal responding to the RFP, with this proposal ready to finance in the tune of some 700 million US. So why? Because we saw the value in that. And I've just identified a number of areas those values can be found. But here's what. The government, through its Minister of Finance at that time in 2019, responded by saying, listen, you don't have to pay that 700 million. Here's a better offer that we can make to you. And of course, recognizing that it was a better offer, that we would not have had to borrow 700 million, which we had the backings of our finances then ready, willing and able to execute. We were then, as we accepted that their proposal, we then put that to rest. And then we began to work in earnest to achieve the objective through their proposal. What was their proposal? Essentially, let's remind ourselves about this, because we cannot detach ourselves from how we got here. The proposal that invited us to, and we in fact responded by detaching ourselves from our finances, willing to finance 700 million US then, that proposal was a very laudable proposal. It was 3 years moratorium, 10 years to pay, so a total of 13 years, and that we will pay in installments over that period. That was the proposal. And that we will be dealing directly with the government. And so we started to, and continued along the way to satisfy some 10-point requirements that he would have requested. That's the Minister of Finance. And the Minister of Finance would have, and it was sometime around an election, local election campaign, in his election platform campaigning, would have identified to the country that the OWTU's company Patriotric met all of the criteria that he requested on the basis of the proposal that they placed before us. And we did. But as we continue to negotiate the nuts and bolts of that, his offer, and as we were about to sign on the dotted line, here's where the problem came. The problem was identified that such a proposal made by the minister, the same minister who spoke yesterday, he hasn't changed. It's the same Minister of Finance from the beginning of this government, 2015 to present. That proposal, the bondholders and their lenders said that they could not go ahead with that proposal. So in other words, we will walk down a road, courted down a road with a proposal. Let's not forget that. This is a very crucial point. We were courted along a path, down a road, with a proposal that could not stand. The minister, same minister, made a proposal to us which required us to forego what we came with, embrace that, but it was a proposal that could not stand, simply because the bondholders would not allow, would not stand for it. It could not happen. And therefore we found ourselves in a situation where now we have to, in a COVID situation, where things change globally, financially and otherwise, we had now to hustle with limited time now to find upfront payment for the asset for which we still are committed to purchasing on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That is the context, that's the scenario, that's the predicament that we were placed in. Till this day, there has never been an acknowledgement and or acceptance on the part of the minister that they made an offer that he could not fulfill. And so, it's like brother, sister, aunt, uncle, friend, making an offer to you to sell your house. You come to them, you say you want to pay cash, they say no, listen, repairs, lots of repairs to do on this building. And therefore you see this property, payment over a period of time instead of cash. And you say, well, okay, yes, I will use the money to fix the roof, fix the flooring, fix some retaining wall on the property. And so I will pay you in installments over a period of time. And so that uncle, aunt, and then whoever tell you, they say, well, no, listen, you don't even have to start to pay. No, next 3 years you'll start to pay. And you say, well, yes, good. I will use that money that I intended to pay you up front to do those things, and I will pay you. But here's what. When you now go to the bank, because they say they will transfer it to you. You go now to the bank say, hey, hold it. You can't make such an offer. You can't be not transferring that property to, you see that property your aunt, your uncle, your brother, your sister want you to, where you're going to spend this money on? You know, we're getting money borrowed to do that, you know, because we're not transferring those assets over to you. And that's the situation here. Offer was made by your aunt, uncle, nenum, auntie, grandma, whoever, that when you go to the bank say no. And that is what. And we would prefer that come straight, tell the country that, listen, we made an offer in good faith. The union accepted it in good faith. But it was not an offer that could have stand. I want that point to live with us as long as we live and as long as this issue continues. Because that is where we are now. It has been so then and now. Which is why the issue of an upfront payment came about. And so, in going forward to get an upfront payment, it was easy on the part of Credit Suisse to make such a proposal on the company's behalf, on Patriotric's behalf, because Credit Suisse, as this international banker financier, is seized with all of the arrangements and so on, all of the information, simply because they would have arranged financing for the country, a number of companies, state-owned companies, especially the former PETROTRIN, anti-PHL, and so on, and would have been involved in the restructuring of the debt post the closure of the refinery. So in other words, if there's anybody who knows the business about where they found themselves with respect to this asset that cannot transfer is Credit Suisse. And they said just that there has to be some innovative way for this deal to go through, because these assets cannot be transferred because the bondholders would not release it. What would we have to do for it to be released, for these assets to be released? Now, let's take some simple steps here. Why do we need the assets to be released? We need the assets to be released because that has to be held to be able to acquire some 500 million US to do all of the repairs. So there are two aspects to this thing. 500 million US to do the refurbishment and repairs and to fix all of those tanks and so on, get the plant back up so that it will be with a state of reliability, engineering reliability, so that it would not shut down the way in which it used to shut down. It will be able to run and make money for the country, but it will be able to provide a level of fuel security for the country and for its customers and so on. So to be able for someone to put that money out, they must, for the time of the loan, hold something. And to be able to hold that, those assets ought to be free. But it cannot be free because the bondholders, as I said, and I continue to make the point, say that will not happen unless you pay some money upfront. So money is there ready, and I want to again put on the table that has not been in dispute. All of the committees that looked at this issue, all of the back and forth and questioning and so on, and the meetings that we had verified that that is not in dispute. Monies to be spent to do the refurbishment is not in dispute. Has never been. It is there. Now, the US 500 million for the purchase, it is for it to be released so that we can go ahead with the repairs. And so Credit Suisse would have looked at the entire arrangement across the board and determined the best way forward that the government will benefit, that the government would not have to lose anything, that the government would not have to put out any cash in this. It's the following which I want to put before you in response to what was said yesterday by the minister. So we're okay so far. We are at the point now where the minister, in his letter dated the 20th of January, requested that the company Patriotric get confirmation from Credit Suisse of an upfront 500 million US. I want to report this morning that beyond any shadow of the doubt, that Credit Suisse had committed to and communicated through its proposal that they are committed to paying that US 500 million upfront so that those assets can be released, so that it can be held, that we can access the other 500 million US. So that's the first point. But that for that to happen, they have placed in the proposal, they placed two proposals. One called option one, the preferred option of the Union of Patriotic, and another option, option two. And I will go through in sequence so that we will get a proper appreciation of what we are talking about. And why this payment is necessary? It is because of the covenant in the TPHL's 9.75% 2026 notes and covenants in the credit agreement dated June 18, 2019. So there is such a covenant existing, and it's dated June 18, 2019. The minister in his presentation, mentioned that Credit Suisse committed to pay 500 million US upfront, and he only mentioned that when he was asked by a reporter, what about, did Credit Suisse commit? Now, he made his presentation, he didn't say that, because yes, whether by intentional omission or otherwise, he did not say that. And it was only because he was asked a question by a reporter, then he admitted. He also did not deny that Trafigura was prepared to invest 500 million US dollars for the refurbishment, and that is what I was referring to a while ago. The fact is that Credit Suisse is prepared to pay US $500 million upfront, which satisfied, as I said, the condition in his last correspondence dated January 20th this year, 2021. The minister did not say that all Credit Suisse wanted was the government to issue transferable tax credits. Now he said that, but he gave another flavor to it, that Credit Suisse will pay on the same day that the government issue these transferable tax credits. So that Credit Suisse committed to pay, but that once these transferable tax credits are given on the same day, Credit Suisse, and this is not too long from now, this is not 6 months down the road, this is as immediate as the process would allow. As fast as they can go, the government that is, Credit Suisse will pay 500 million US upfront. But what is a tax credit? I think we need to begin to discuss here openly. What is a tax credit? Because if we don't do that, we can end up in some misconceptions. It's an incentive given by government to encourage foreign direct investment. The receiver of that tax credit will not have to pay taxes related to the investment being made. It's nothing new. It's something that this government and this Minister of Finance are accustomed to, that multinationals that come to our shores, that they enjoy tax credit. And according to the Ministry of Finance document, major investment incentives in Trinidad and Tobago, this is the document here, it's on their website, the ministry's website. Under the section energy sector, there are several incentives. One of them being a 140% tax credit on expenditure. Let's just let that marinate for a while. Tax credit is nothing new. Multinationals who come to our shores and do investment here in the country enjoy this benefit, this tax credit. Patriotric, a locally owned entity making $1 billion US investment in our country, requesting tax credit, similar to what those who, when they get it, all of their profits are repatriated outside. Patriotic, through its financiers, Credit Suisse is saying that this deal can go through if you treat them equal to how you treat the multinational. All we are asking for at this juncture is for that to be transferred. He gives the impression that the government will have to put out some 700 million. That's erroneous. Let me say that again. The Minister of Finance gives the impression that the government will have to fork out some 700 hard-earned, hard-to-get $1 million TT to get this deal to go through. That, my friends, members of the media, Trinidad and Tobago, is not so. So, under the section energy sector, several incentives are identified, and in areas where it's not specifically directly related, just as they would sit and discuss with the multinationals, we are asking for them to sit with us and let us determine under this act where foreigners benefit, let us sit and let the country, ordinary people, benefit as a result of this major undertaking that Patriotric is about to undertake. The spin that was put on that is that what they're asking for, their proposal will require the government to put out 700 million TT, and the government is not prepared to do that. That is not what is required. And we'll go through what the proposal would have requested. So that it talks about a 140% tax credit on expenditure. And of course, I add up the 500 on one hand and the 500 on the other hand. And at the end of the day, it will be some US $1 billion. You know what is that? US $1 billion. And here's what that could do. What it would do. This would allow for the capitalization and the amortization on a straight line basis of over 5 years. This means that if a multinational spends $8 billion TT dollars, the government is to forego $11 billion TT dollars in revenue over 5 years. So that's by way of example. So over a 5-year period, the incentives that tax incentive that they will get, it would require the government to forego 11 billion TT dollars. This is in exchange for the hope that in the 6th year, the government will receive tax revenue from the multinational. So that's a risk they take. So that in the 6th year, they will begin to get tax revenue because they would have forgone through this incentive to the multinational for the first 5 years, some 11 billion TT. This is a risk the government has always been taking. This is nothing new. What the minister did not say under the Patriotic proposal, when the tax credit is granted, the government will immediately receive 500 million US dollars, which translates into 5.5 billion TT dollars in free cash flow to the government and to TPHL. Let's just get that again. What he did not say, you see, we consistently make the point. Yes, we agree this is a complex negotiation, a complex issue. No acquisition of this nature is simple, which is why it requires a proper consideration, a proposal of this nature, proper consideration and proper scrutinizing and so on, and proper evaluation by the relevant and proper and competent authority to go through line by line the proposal, so that those who are making an evaluation of it would be able to see the benefit, the immediate, medium and long-term benefit to Trinidad and Tobago. And you know, I want to make this point this morning. I genuinely feel that we have been consistently along the way. We have not been treated with to the extent that these proposals deserve, the respect they deserve. had it been a multinational, the multinational would have been called in, and they would have sat with the multinational and ensured that they understand fully what occurs, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, is that as we sent this proposal in, beating the deadline, the minister's response was not to meet with us, although there was a request from Credit Suisse and another financer, and I'll come to that a bit later on, to meet with the minister and the ministry and his team so that they can verify, clear up, they can articulate in the most detailed way how this proposal is going to benefit Trinidad and Tobago. Consistently, that request has also been denied. It makes us believe that it's just a formality that we will go through over and over, and so you just pass through a process, and then the minister would come in a press conference and give a one-sided view of what happened. When that occurs, it doesn't matter who you support, my brothers and sisters. When that is allowed to happen repeatedly, Trinidad and Tobago loses. And when Trinidad and Tobago loses, every individual listening now, in some way, shape, or form, would have lost an opportunity to be able to take himself or herself, lift himself, elevate out of the hopelessness that now exists into a horizon of hope. But we'll come back to that a bit later on. And so, what the minister did not say, I want to repeat, is that under the Patriotric proposal, when tax credit is granted, the government will immediately receive US $500 million, which translates into 5.5 billion TT dollars in free cash flow for the government and TPHL, because TPHL will be immediately able to retire some US $500 million in debt, which attracts an interest rate of 10% over 6 years. That is what they are faced with right now. And this is going to alleviate that. And that's a benefit that he did not put on the table. Perhaps because his team did not examine that. Perhaps because they did not have the capacity to do it. But I dare say, because they did not respond to the requests by our bankers and us to sit down in a respectful manner and discuss in detail this proposal that is before the government. You think about that. A company, you think any multinational company, BP, Shell, BHP, Billiton, BG, any multinational that comes to our shores, make a proposal like this before the government will go through some routine mill, have some of their, as he said, technocrats and so on examine it, and then comes back out in a press conference and announce. You think that will happen? Oh. That will never happen. It has never happened. They would be given the respect of and afforded an opportunity to sit at the table to articulate their proposal. That was denied to us, Trinidad and Tobago. Why? Is it because we are locals? Is it because there's something else in the pipeline? Yes. Is it because discussions are currently taking place? Yes. We are, and I dare say, reliably informed. And the more we are treated with in this manner, I am moved to believe what we are informed, because we are informed of that quite a while now. But I would have dismissed it because I thought that the government was acting in good faith, and that the offer they made was a good faith offer. And of course we accepted that offer in good faith. And therefore, I refused then to believe that what we were hearing, that there were parallel discussions taking place, which they continue to deny. But we are now moved more to believe that something more is more in the pipeline than crude and products. Yeah? Something else is in the pipeline. Parallel discussions are taking place so that The mere extension of 15 days, and everybody said, why 15 days? Why, oh, that's so short. 15 days was to be able to say we give them an opportunity. Their case is, if they are allowed to get away with it, is that we give opportunity after opportunity. But those opportunities were dead in the water, especially this one, because as our bankers now come to the table with money, and with a proposal that is not a new proposal, a proposal that is workable, a proposal that is feasible, it was dead in the water, because as the minister, honorable minister said, some of his technocrats advised him, he don't advise himself. So the minister himself, Minister of Finance in this country, with a proposal of this nature, because he himself would have announced on the political platform campaigning for a local election that we met all of the criteria. Your technocrats came to you and tell you this thing, Kawu. You don't advise yourself, you took that advice, come to the country and announce that. That's it. We think that is very discourteous. Not to OWTU alone, you know. This must not be seen through the lens of OWTU alone, you know. It is discourteous and disrespectful to all of Trinidad and Tobago. So, the minister did not say that under the Patriotic proposal, since we are transferring the tax credit, it means that Patriotic will be paying, and get this, from day one. So the tax credits that we are asking for this, now remember all of this is because of the lien. If there wasn't a lien, and we would not have been in this discussion, trying to find different ways, because we remain committed to this deal. So what he did not say is that as we get those tax credits from day one, once operation starts, Patriotic will be paying on an annual basis 75 to 100 million US dollars. Yeah? These taxes. These taxes. So, I mean, at least put both sides of the argument on the table, so that if we get tax credit in a situation where when you give the multinationals tax credits, day one they don't pay. We are saying because we got that to be able to release the assets to do what we have to do to get it operational, from day one we are going to pay some 75 to 100 million US, and that's based on the profitability that our financials would have shown. 75 to 100 million US per year, which translates to $35 billion over the 7-year period. So, multinational would have 5 years. We are saying 7. And in that, over that 7-year period, when we would start, when we would pay taxes and continuing it, not just 7 and stop, and continuing from day one, we'll be paying taxes. Because if had we had that incentive, and of course we would have been going for tax incentive under the same act, we would have not been paying taxes for a period that this would have guaranteed. But we are saying because we use that to offset this lien situation, we will be paying taxes from our profits immediately, so that the country will benefit from that. That he did not say. So this makes it even makes our proposal more attractive, more accommodative, more beneficial to the government than the international, the multinationals and so on. Remember, you know, it's like you have to prove yourself, and the standards they will hold you to is much more than they will hold the multinationals to. We understand the playing field and the environment and the thinking of some of the people in government, and therefore as a result of that, we are willing to allow ourselves to be held to higher standards than the multinationals. And therefore, that is why our proposal will be more accommodating to government revenue. So what does it take away from this? It is that not as the minister would have portrayed one way or another, or allow for it to be conveyed that the government have to put out money. The government do not have to put out those 700 million in US. They do not have to do that. Put out some US 700 million. No, absolutely not. There was another option that Credit Suisse put on the table. Option B. But we insisted, Credit Suisse agreed that they put that option as another option available for the government to examine. But they agreed with us that our preferred option, our desired and our most preferred option, is the first option that deals with the tax credit, because no government liability, no government involvement, the government would be increasing its borrowing, all of those things would have no type of impact on the government. All the government has was to do in the proposal that I've just identified is to treat us as equals to how they treat the multinationals and so on. I want to announce this morning that subsequent to our submission of this proposal, and you would recall that we would have communicated that at approximately 1:42 a.m., it's in the morning of Friday, is that Friday? Friday the 5th, beating the deadline, we would have submitted our proposal, this proposal that we are talking about. And you know, one might ask, why 1:42 a.m.? I think that, I had that in my mind, somebody must ask, or they must wonder, why 1:42 a.m. in the morning, Patriotric submitted a proposal? I want to say to the country that it is precisely because we were back and forth with Credit Suisse during the period, during the day, late in the evening and so on. Such is the respect they have for the veracity, our work program, our financials and so on, that they so benefited it that they would have been engaging and satisfying the request to give that letter of commitment. And that is why, as we would have finally got what the minister would have required, we sent it off immediately, and that was 1:42 a.m. in the morning, beating the deadline. But subsequent to that, I want to announce here this morning, we also had discussions, because you always want to have more than one options. And we had another proposal subsequent to that. Of course, that was not submitted in the deadline, I am admitting here this morning, but what would prevent us, or prevent the government that is of all this goodwill and good faith and so on, looking at another proposal at the same time, having his team examine another proposal? What would prevent that if the proposal comes from a credible source? And that source is the UBS. And UBS is Union Bank of Switzerland, one of the top financiers globally, the top 5. And it was along a similar line, but in that case, they were prepared to do the entire 1 billion financing. 500 plus the 500 for the upgrade and repairs. US 1 billion. So it could not have been that we had before us, subsequent to the submission of that, such a proposal, and we would deny the minister having him have sight of that. We thought that he also should have sight of that, and we passed that on to him. Well, no mention was made of that. I guess that he, it's anybody's guess where the fate of that proposal lie, insofar as they're looking at it and so on. Both banks, my dear friends, brothers and sisters, Trinidad and Tobago, both banks, reputable banks, in the top 5 in the globe, in the world, requested meetings. Mr. Minister of Finance to clarify with him and his technocrats and so on, anything, or to make any adjustments or so that could be made. But the minister refused to meet this patriotic order banks. Let's just get that again. $1 billion coming to your economy, the country is going to benefit. The only difference here is that it's coming from a local entity. But at that difference, make a big difference because it's local, the country is going to benefit substantially. The country's interest is held in focus, it's central to everything that we do. But at $1 billion, and we're not now talking about if we could, or we're going to get. The people are saying that here is the financing. Let's meet. That has been dismissed. Ask yourself if that favors Trinidad and Tobago. Because somebody somewhere wants to say to the population, well, we give them a chance. How much chance we will give them? We have to go ahead and start it up. It seems, if we are not careful, what will pass before our eyes as a genuine attempt, if we are not careful and we do not scrutinize it with a third eye, we might mistake it as a genuine attempt. But we still hold hope that if they are genuine, that certainly is not the way to approach this. We're not talking about $100,000 or 1 million or 10 million, or even 100 million TT. We're talking about US $1 billion. So we're not now talking in a vacuum. It cannot be said, and I want to make bold to say today, through the medium of you, the media, all of Trinidad and Tobago and the world, let it not be said, because they will have their people carry that narrative, that the union don't have the money. We put that to bed a long time ago. What is required here is the cooperation of the government, making good on their commitment. Making good, because if you committed, you gave me an offer and it couldn't work. But here's the bank saying to you now, listen, this could work. Not only that it could work, you're going to get money up front. But here's what you have to do. And what you have to do is nothing different to what you would have given the other multinationals, because they know, the banks know. The bank, if anybody know, the banks know that. What everybody does get. The banks know. So give Patriotric. At least give them a hearing. But not just them. We are prepared to sit with you, sit with them, and you in a meeting, virtual meeting, and explain to you. And of course, in those discussions, my dear brothers and sisters and friends, in those discussions there's always innovation that leaves room for a successful conclusion. But once you close the door, on the basis of advice coming from your technocrats, and we talk about those technocrats in a little while, but on the basis of that, because he said he didn't see it, and you could not see it, and if that comes to you, and they say that it's not workable, you would want to delve into that in the most detailed way. Come, technocrats, sit with me, and let's see. Did that occur? It's anybody's guess. But I want to summarize, because we want to have some takeaway here. If there's any takeaway here, I want you to accept how the country would benefit from such a proposal. In other words, what has been denied to Trinidad and Tobago, we want to summarize that for you here this morning. So it's not factual that the country will get nothing. It's probably far from that. It's not factual. And here's how a Patriotric's proposal, or more concisely, Patriotric's latest proposal, but even more concisely, Patriotric's latest proposal that comes with upfront financing. Here's how that will benefit the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. One, an upfront payment of US $500 million translates to 5.5 billion TT dollars of free cash flow over the next 6 years, because TPHL will be able to immediately retire their 500 million US debt at an interest rate, a current interest rate of 10% over a 6-year period. Two, the reduced debt on TPHL books may attract a more favorable credit rating, which will result in a lower cost of borrowing for TPHL and the government. They always complain about that. So as TPHL immediately reduce their debt, this may attract a more favorable credit rating, which will result in a lower cost of borrowing to TPHL and the government. And TPHL will be able to do all sort of expansion and so on. And of course, at the end of that expansion and investment and so on, developmental works and so on, drilling and all of those things, guess what? Employ more people. So the people will benefit. Three, Patriotic will pay approximately 75 to 100 million US dollars over a 7-year period, which translates to TT $5 billion. When the refinery is restarted, 500 million US in foreign exchange will become available annually, because the government will now have the option, which they will exercise, to purchase fuel in TT dollars, because the fuel is produced. This translates to US $5 billion over 10 years. In other words, in a 10-year period, based on what is occurring now, the government, the people of this country, will be denied access to $5 billion US dollars simply because of what? The government has to purchase, use hard to get scarce US currency to purchase fuel for the country. There's no way in the country, if you know, you tell me, there's no way in the country a refinery is turning out fuels for us here, for local consumption and for their foreign and regional customer. And the last time we checked, the refinery was down since 2018. It does not produce any fuel. The refinery in Point 14, that shut down, that's not producing any fuel. We don't know about it. We have a lot of forested land in this country. We don't know about any refinery in this country producing fuel. What we do know is that they have to purchase that fuel from externally. And to be able to do that, on that market out there, the TT dollars, whether it's polymer or cotton, nobody wants that. They want US dollars. And what we do know, to another fact, is that US currency is hard to access here now. And what we do know, because of that, we will make available in TT dollars to the government reliable fuel supply. So they do not have to now use the scarce foreign exchange to purchase. It will be produced right here. And so the country will benefit in a number of significant ways. The country will receive, number 5, the country will receive 500 million US dollars in investment for the upgrade and restart of the refinery. Let's not forget that. There has never been any dispute about that money that is waiting there to be spent. Picture myself as a worker, having been employed for 2 or 3 years, or perhaps even longer than that. Or I lost my job a year ago, or I lost my job a month ago, or because of how the things are going in the economy, I might lose my job tomorrow. But that there's an opportunity because of the skill and the competence, the experience that I have, to use that experience for the benefit of the country. But I'll be able to sustain my family with a sustainable job. Because somebody wants to spend US $500 million to start up an asset. But that is being the picture you as a worker, and there are many, many thousands of them unemployed here today. How you would feel to know that you are denied that opportunity. Today, in Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately, it's the reality, it's a fact, nobody could deny that many, many thousands of workers have lost their jobs. And many more thousands to go. And that nothing new is happening on the horizon. There's no good news in Trinidad and Tobago today. There's no announcement of any new revenue stream coming into the country. No. And the Minister of Finance in 1 week laments in a press conference how the government loses revenue. And as a result of that, that's another issue by itself. But as a result of that loss or reduction in revenue, the implication for that is cut back. And when they say cut back, it's to cut your back as a worker, cut you out, send you back home with consummate ease, as if that has no effect on the family, as if it has no effect on the community, but both of which occurs. The devastating impact of so many thousands and thousands and thousands of workers sent home. Why then, in the face of all of that, you would dismiss an opportunity to put people back to work? There's a formula that is applied, which formula results in a few people benefiting at the expense of many. And that formula we thought would have changed, or should be changed, overturned, and allow for the many to benefit, including the few. But that formula has not changed. So, open your eyes, Trinidad and Tobago, and you will see the few that are going to benefit from out, while the many thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of us lose as a result of that. So Patriotric expect to make US $200 million in after tax profit. You know, that is why those people are interested in them. And at some point, not today, because we don't want to give away our trade secrets, about that, the only thing we want to say is that we're not going to be operated like how PETROTRIN operated that. That's gone. That's how the politicians operated it. All the political parties operated it. How they put all the political hacks and so on at the top management position and so on. Paid high, produced nothing, plunge the company into problems. That's a thing of we departed those shores. That's a thing of the past. We're not going to operate that way. But at those banks, international banks, a bank would not sit down with you, comrade, if your business plan and business arrangement is not solid. A bank wouldn't be talking to all of us in the night with you if your business arrangement and your business plan is not solid. That is what we are. And therefore, I'm not going to say today or give away some of the secrets, although we are very, very apprehensive, we are very fearful that they have that in their disposal. How to make money. That how to make money plan, those financial, those business plan, those research, all of which we paid for, might very well end up in the hands. You know, you could be talking something today and somebody else hearing exactly what you're saying. You could produce a document and it could end up in somebody else's hand on some political platform and so on, as has happened in the past. What is to stop them, to prevent them? But they are not monks or priests or pundit or imams or so. Yeah, what to prevent them? Those honorable, godly men that I described, those are not the people that we're dealing with. What is to prevent them from giving their friends that are waiting in the line, that did not do the research, that did not do the work, that did not invest any money in all of this thus far? What is to prevent them from giving them our plan? We are rather suspicious about that. And so today I would not say publicly how we can declare with confidence that a patriotic operation of those assets will see us, after all the expenses and so on, at a minimum making some 200 million US annually. And that would translate over 10 years to $2 billion in foreign exchange available to do what? Back into the market here. So every year, in addition to the other things that I have described, we will be able to make available some 200, at a minimum, 200 million US. And that is in a post or inside a COVID period. So what are the plans going forward? It's not a seller's market. It's a buyer's market now. And nobody will be committing what we are committed to, because we will see beyond the horizon. We see a lot of value. We see Trinidad and Tobago. So it's peppercorn, cheap sale. This thing is going to go. And perhaps, a thought came through my head. Perhaps, just perhaps, the stage perhaps, lights, camera, and action might have been set just to accommodate that. You can't, even though you have the money. You want too much, even though you have the money. And here's somebody else who can do it. Let's look out to see what are the plans that are going to unfold. So, net benefit, $800 million from TPHL saving plus taxes of $1 billion US, $500 million US in foreign direct investment, $5 billion in saving US, $5 billion in saving from fuel import over 10 years. Yeah. $2 billion in profits will be available over 10 years. And this totaled to a $9.3 billion US over a 10-year period. And that is what Trinidad and Tobago stands to lose through the denial of a patriotic acquisition of these assets. In addition, patriotic revenue in excess of $3.5 billion at an average oil price of US $50 per year. This translates into GDP growth of some approximately 14%. Job creation, approximately 4,000 jobs during the refurbishment and restart activities in 2021 and in 2022. It's ready to go. Ready to go, sign on the dotted line, and let's get this thing going. Job creation of approximately 4,000 jobs. And over 1,000 sustainable jobs post the restart from direct, local, and third-party maintenance and construction and contract employment after your restart. And of course, the spin-off impact of that to not just South, but to Trinidad and Tobago. And why are we saying all of this again this morning in response to what the Minister said? Why are we saying this? Why did we come out in response to what Minister Khan and who it was? Mr. Khan, when he made his announcement on that fateful Saturday afternoon? Why? Simply because we feel, one, we are committed to, two, the country would lose a glorious opportunity. This is why we are staying in the game. This is why we are responding. We could have easily said, well, you see that? We fold and we go. But it's not about folding and going, it's about knowing the value. A value that no multinational that comes to our shores would see. A value that, as we have seen, the technocrats didn't see. A value that no entity geared for hoarding onto themselves alone in the minority, wealth and profit for themselves, they wouldn't see the value that we are seeing. We are seeing it because we have a broader scope and vision and intention for Trinidad and Tobago. And there's a saying, put your money where your mouth is. OWTU did consistently. We didn't just score. We did it. Recently, there were commentary about the capacity of the Ministry of Finance to be able to deal not just with these issues, but broader, similar broad economic issues and so on, proper evaluation and so on. There was some commentary on that, of its capacity. And you would know that their chief expert, perhaps their sole expert, that spent years in the ministry, would have retired last year. Would have retired last December? December. That's the Honorable Mr. Vishnu Paul. And as he retired, he would have left with all of his wealth of expertise and competence and experience in matters of this nature. As we speak, we are unsure. We are not sure that he was consulted with respect to the latest proposal because he left, he retired. What we are certain about, whether or not the capacity now exists at the Ministry of Finance to do this complex analyzing of this proposal, whether or not it exists there now, we feel that capacity was not exercised properly to allow for a proper analysis to give the minister so that he can make the statement that he made. And so whether intentionally or otherwise, and I am not imputing anything to anybody, whatever the reason, the minister was denied an opportunity, and I want you to play here of that press conference. A small clip before I end. Yeah? Yeah. And listen to this.
There's no doubt that if the refinery is operating, there will be economic activity. Nobody could argue that point. That's why we want the refinery to restart, if possible. But that is not what was submitted to us. The proposal, you see, I didn't analyze it myself. One should not advise oneself. So I gave it to the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance.
You got that? Play that again. Play that again.
There's no doubt that if the refinery is operating, there will be economic activity. Nobody could argue that point. That's why we want the refinery to restart, if possible. But that is not what was submitted to us. The proposal, you see, I didn't analyze it myself. One should not advise oneself. So I gave it to the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance.
Play that again, one more time.
There's no doubt that if the refinery is operating, there will be economic activity. Nobody could argue that point. That's why we want the refinery to restart, if possible. But that is not what was submitted to us. The proposal, you see, I didn't analyze it myself. One should not advise oneself. So I gave it to the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance.
Did you get that? Did you get that? $1 billion US coming to your country at a time when it's needed most, at a time where people are going home every day by the thousands, at a time where there's no new revenue stream to be announced, at a time where the only news is crime and cutbacks, crime and cutbacks. No cutback on crime, you know. Crime and cutbacks, crime and cutbacks. At that desperate moment in the country, a proposal that comes before a country's Minister of Finance. He didn't analyze it himself, he gave it to the technicians, so he don't advise himself. And when they come back with an advice, the nature of which we had just described this morning, there's no taking a look at that. He accepts that. We believe that we were not fairly, our proposal was not fairly examined, and it was not fairly treated with. And it is either that with the departure of Mr. Vishnu Danpur, there is no longer the capacity at the Ministry of Finance to properly evaluate such a proposal, to put before the country the benefit that the country would get just by the mere giving of tax credits, which tax credits is given to the multinationals in any case. But I also want to end with another clip out of that press conference to debunk, put to bed, finally, in anybody's mind, that we don't have the money or that we didn't get the money. That is not in this report.
That Credit Suisse is prepared to pay the $500 million up front.
Yes. The whole point is in return for that 500, which I said we don't get. So let us slow it down a little bit. The $500 that Credit Suisse is going to put out, 500 million US dollars, let's make it clear. It's a big number. 500 million US dollars that Credit Suisse will put out, will provide, is in exchange for 750 million US that the government has to put out. Do I make myself clear? So that Credit Suisse gives Trinidad Petroleum 500 million US, the government gives Credit Suisse 750 million US. That's what's going on. So even though Credit Suisse will put out the 500 million US right away, that is true. But they will only do that if the government puts out 750 million US in tax credits right away, and it's given to them, and they can sell the tax credit.
Right. So did you say, let's slow it down? Let's slow that down. Slow it down. First issue. Honorable Minister of Finance, Colm Imbert, did not say up front in his presentation that. And let's just say, it is only when the reporter asked the question that information came from him. Let's slow it down a bit and get it right. It is only when the reporter asks the question, then he tells the country, through the response to that question, that yes, Credit Suisse have the money and they're willing to pay. That's one. Okay? Secondly, that Credit Suisse would only pay the money if the government gave the 750 million upfront, tax credits upfront. The proposal contemplates that over a period of time they will cash in. It's not that let's tell the country. It is not a request for the government to pay 750 million US. No. Two, it is not a request for the government to immediately in one fell swoop give up $750 million in tax credits. It is over a period of time, spread over a period of time, that will be drawn down upon. And as you draw down upon that tax credit, which means that the government will have to, when that is sold, whoever it is sold to would not have to pay taxes. But as that is drawn down upon, Patriotric is immediately from day one going to pay tax. You understand it? So that to make it appear as though the country is going to lose, that is entirely not so. And of course, all of the other benefits that I have identified, and some of which I have not identified this morning, will come to the country. a proper spreadsheet, a proper evaluation of the pros and the cons, the benefits and so on, we believe has not been done. Because had the minister had that information, he will be able to tell the country, just as I'm saying here this morning, on the one side, the right-hand side, this is what the government have to give up, but on the left-hand column, this is what this exhaustive list is what the country is going to benefit from. And all of that will happen because they cannot make good on the offer. Patriotic comes to the table with money now, which he agrees that we come to the table with money now. So here we have it. They no longer can say that we don't have money, we have the money. But because there's a problem with the offer they made, we have to use that money to release the assets. So we'll pay the money. But all we are asking for is transferable tax credits. All we are asking for is what everybody else gets. All the multinationals. There's not a multinational that would come to our shore and didn't ask for this particular incentive. Indeed, to make foreign direct investment more attractive to various countries and economy, what they do, they offer these types of incentives and so on. And therefore, Trinidad and Tobago is no different than other countries. And in that regard, in the past it has happened, it is still happening, and I showed you where to find it, and so on. What our bankers had called for is a discussion that did not happen. And so here we are again, and I want to close with this point. I want to leave you with this point. Leave everybody, all the naysayers, all the supporters which are in the majority, that rest assured, brothers and sisters, comrades, friends, supporters of this noble cause, rest assured that at the end of the day, the OWTU showed that we had as a union the capacity to purchase this asset and to run this asset. And interestingly, but importantly, they never once said that our business plan will fail. They never once said that our operational plan will fail, that we can't do what we say we will do. Because we have standing with us, just as we have those two international bankers, we have standing side by side with us a wealth of expertise and competence and experience in refinery turnaround, refinery upgrades and so on, refinery management and so on, so that we will have the proper and the very quick transfer of technology to our local people here. So at the end of it, in every way, shape or form, Trinidad and Tobago will benefit. Minister, Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Colm Imbert, this morning or this afternoon, we want to say respectfully that your evaluation team, your technocrats, did not do justice to a proposal that would have done justice to Trinidad and Tobago's current status. Yeah.
So do you think that if you were supposed to go to a third party, would be technocrats and probably Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber, do you think that we would find it favorable and we would use them to allow people to acquire the assets? A third party.
I think so. An independent, non-aligned, objective third party evaluating this proposal, because you don't want to miss a beat on an opportunity. And therefore I have the fullest confidence that having examined this properly, with the capacity to so do, because you have to have an eye for what you're looking for and how the country will benefit. Once that is the case, and you put the pros and cons to benefit as opposed to what they would have to give up in the hand of corporation, there's absolutely no doubt. And may I also remind everybody that the Economic Recovery Advisory Committee had recommended that government work with the preferred bidder Patriotric to ensure the release restart of the refinery. Let me just say that again. You remember that committee that the government had set up post-COVID last year? Yeah? Roadmap to recovery, and how the country would recover in a post-COVID situation, meaning that it is even worse than how it was before, given the impact of COVID. That committee, among other recommendations, would have recommended that the government work with Patriotric to ensure that this refinery starts. And when we say work with Patriotric, if that is to be accepted in good faith, is not to accept, take a proposal, hand your technocrats and then come back and say, no, no, no. It is to diligently, in a most cooperative way, work with Patriotric, because that committee, along with the other committee, the evaluation committee, along with our financiers and all our business consortium, sees value in the proposal that was made.
So we're hearing from you this morning that you're still in the game.
We are very much in the game. We are very much in the game. Yeah.
So what they
would have
said yesterday.
Yeah. Somebody hit me, except the fellow who are boxing with. The referee, something I don't watch the referee hands. We need a good referee. But we're in the game. Yeah. Something
so have you, and you spoke about a fear of your proposal getting into the long time.
Oh yes.
Have you all registered, I mean like in songwriting, you have a copyright date. Has that been done in terms of your proposal?
All of the non-disclosure agreements that we would have signed requires that, because it has happened in the past. When they're talking with BP and Shell and EOG and BHP Billiton and so on, they don't allow that to come out. The non-disclosure agreements is signed and it is held very confidentially and so on. In this case, because of who we are and who we are dealing with and so on, and the different players. Now remember, I said on many occasions, there's a particular member of the government negotiating team very early on, a particular guy, yes? Does not want this union to Patriotic to acquire this process at all. He does not want that at all. And therefore he's working that person very hard to ensure that it does not happen. And he's touted as an expert. They listen to him. The PETROTRIN, the TPHL board and the board of the Paria and so on, they listen to him. Could you imagine the management of Paria, who has a vested interest in keeping their jobs, sent to negotiate with us the sale of Paria, the sale of the refinery and so on? What do you think will happen? What do you think will happen? And that is why the thing was stalled all of the time. Because all of the hoops and stumbling blocks and so on was placed in our way. So there is vested interest on the part of a number of people. All of those persons that I have spoken about. And the others, they are privy to our financials, our business plan, and all of those things. And if it is while we are talking, I'm not now saying the government, they are probably far from this, those honorable people in the government, they are far from this, but their underlings and their agents and those persons who they sent to negotiate with us, if they are talking with people, having a parallel conversation, while we are supposed to be the exclusive, talking with them, therein lies the opportunity to leave something by the copying machine and leave something elsewhere. The issue of registering does not apply in this case because we would have signed tight non-disclosure agreements and so on. And that is our concern, that is our apprehension and fear around this thing.
So like Peter being the Lenten season, so like Peter, the government would have denied you all twice. Where, and you say you're still in the game, where do you all go from here now?
Well, today we're not going to announce that, except to say that we are one, responding to what occurred yesterday. And two, we are telling through our response, telling the country that, listen, we have not been treated fairly. The benefits that the country can be derived from this cannot be derived if you have a type of approach that characterized the approach that took place, especially at the last submission. Meaning, it cannot be that you have two of the most powerful bankers in the world saying they're going to back OWTU, Oilfields Workers Trade Union, and you know what and you pass it on to your technocrats and so on. And this is what your technocrats. Who are those technocrats? One may ask. Who are those technocrats? Who would have looked at this and made that recommendation? It's a burning question. Next question.
That's a clarification. Well, Patriotric already more proposals to the government, but independent negotiator or evaluator of the proposal.
What?
Well, Patriotric be calling on the government to what independent evaluator or negotiator to carry through the same thing.
No. I think that we are at the point where the independents, the beneficiaries and so on, are the people who I'm talking to today, through the medium of the media. To let them know what has occurred, and it is for the government now to decide in all fairness. If you are true to your word, if you are committed as you said, if on the occasions, and take note the occasions when public announcement was made about our capacity by members of the government, take note on those occasions, election time on the platform. If you are true to your word, and this matters not to us, if you stand up election time and you talk the truth, if you stand up normal time and you talk the truth, we'll accept that. But if when you say on election time, the next day you change your tone, we would not accept that. The country should not accept that. But the country is in dire straits. Nobody could deny that. Nobody could deny that there's hardly any economic activity, no revenue earning activity, no revenue, new revenue stream is on the horizon. None. All where revenue can be gained is through squeezing the small man more and more and more. How much more can we take? And at this point, it would be a breath of fresh air. I thought that is what he came to announce. Because so confident were we in our proposal, we thought, well, he didn't write us or anything. We thought, well, that is what he came to announce. Yeah? We thought he came to announce that we're moving forward, but no, he was ill-advised again for yet another occasion. Honorable Minister of Finance, we requested to meet with you, you denied us that request. The banks requested to meet with you, you denied the bank that request. You listened to your technocrats, but your technocrats, we feel, didn't do justice to this proposal. And I challenge anyone or everyone to debate with us the veracity of the claim that I made here this morning on the basis of the research.
Could you clarify one of the points the minister would have made about Patriotric getting the refinery, the assets for nothing, and that you get it for free, and that the financiers could sell the assets to a third party?
Oh, no, yes. I don't know why those things are placed there to sensationalize and to put the conversation in a different direction. There's what is called an asset purchase agreement, which is what, had they agreed, this is the next phase that we are moving to. And in that asset purchase agreement, there are legal implications and so on. We are legally binded and bonded to do specific things with that asset. So there's nowhere in the world, let's explore that, absolutely nowhere in the world we can go contrary to that asset purchase agreement, the terms and conditions of that asset purchase agreement, which we would have been asking them to prepare for quite some time now. And all of their safeguards and so on that they would like to have, we are prepared to give them that guarantee in the asset purchase. Basically, it's a little mischievous, eh? So it sounds like we'll get, and how will we be getting it for free if we pay $500 million up front, which we have to repay? So that's not coming from nowhere that we don't have to repay. We have to repay that, and it would not be free. They will be using that 500 million US to offset their debt. They cannot offset their debts now. They cannot go anywhere and borrow. They've said it before. The government is not going to increase its borrowing to do with anything to do with TPHL or so. But US 500 million is going to come straight to the coffers of TPHL and so on. And that is going to immediately reduce their debt arrangement right now.
That's when you clear the lien on the...
So that would allow for the lien situation to be dealt with so that it can be held for the time that we take this loan. It can be held by those who are giving us the money to repay. There's absolutely nobody in the world, and somebody could tell me if there's anybody, that would lend money without security for the time that the loan, they hold that loan. They'll hold that security for the time of the loan. And all of those things have been already worked out. All we are asking for, if you feel so, don't just say that in the public, because it's erroneous. It's wrong. You give the wrong impression. You don't want to talk with us, but you're peddling misinformation in the public. It's wrong, and it's mischievous and so on. Yes, and it's meant to trigger a type of conversation among those who know least. Yeah. So you would hear people calling in and saying all kinds of things, but none of them are privy to the information that I've just disclosed and all of the other information. The minister denied himself the opportunity to get more concise information on this issue. No, to answer your question, absolutely not. Yeah?
So you are still open for discussions with the financiers and with the...
Well, the financiers are shocked. They are shocked. Because the work, and I did say to you, that the reason why we sent in that 1:42 a.m. in the morning is because we were working back and forth with Credit Suisse. Such is the level of confidence in our business plan that they allowed and they continue to work with us. So they are shocked. Yeah? Yeah, so it is cash. Trinidad and Tobago, Patriotric, came to the government with a cash upfront payment of US $500 million, which is sorely needed at this point in time. Yes.
What's just let us know between that and now it's 500.
Yes. Okay, great. So when we came to responding to the RFP, we had our financiers at that time agreed to pay US $700 million. The government said, no, listen, I'm giving you a better offer, as I mentioned earlier. So we discharged them and we engaged the government in their offer. Their offer could not go through. And because the offer couldn't go through, because the bondholders said, no, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. Because it couldn't go through, we were then faced with an upfront payment. Now, remember the 700 million, the terms of that 700 million was to pay over 13 years. And so we are saying that the net present value of that 13 years down the road is US 500 million. That is how that worked out to be 500 million US. So the 700 million that they would have collected in installments, which they offered us in installment year by year, from year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, and at the end of it, on the 13th year, they would have collected the 700 million. We are saying you're getting this money up front. And the value of that I could use up front is worth 500 million. There's a formula for that, and that's easy and that's accepted, that the net present value is US 500 million. Yeah, so that's it. We are not daunted in any way, shape or form. And when you have a plan, a good plan, a good business plan, everybody listens, financiers listens. When you have a plan, and that plan has the support and protection and guidance and blessings of Almighty God, everybody follows. God is at work here. God is at work. But as we know from inception, while God is at work, another entity is always at work. But we believe in the Almighty God. And the power and the strength of Almighty God. And the fact that the blood, sweat, and tears of the people, of our forefathers, our founding fathers, those who went before us, those who would have worked there without any health and safety protection and so on, no modern legislation and so on, who would have given up their families and so on, who would have lost limb and life and so on, for that asset to operate, where the country would have benefited, we feel that we owe it to them and the future generation to ensure that it stays in the hands of local. And when you say local, the best people to operate that, it is the Alkis Workers Trade Union and all of those experienced workers. And don't get confused when we say operated. Ansel Roger and the executive of the OWTU will not be turning valves and so on, although we know I have a refinery background, I have an offshore background, an engineering background. We know how all of those plants operate, which is why we can have the discussions with them any day, at any time, in the most detailed way. So anybody who calls from wherever they call from on the radio and support a view that is not backed by facts, engineering facts and financial facts, is just someone who's speaking to the wind. But we speak to the facts, and therefore I'm saying that it is, notwithstanding the fact that we have all of this experience, we will not be managing. We will be providing opportunity for all of the workers, but that entity will be managed by a foreign management who has the capacity and experience and would have registered enormous success in the past in doing that. That is where we are located. And when the banks, let me finally, when we close by saying, when those banks look at, it's like the bank going to lend you money to fix your car. But then the bank asks you, who's your mechanic? Follow by the road? Or the bank telling you they're going to purchase a property for you. Doesn't the bank list who are the evaluators and so on, evaluation and so on, the quality surveyors and so on, because they have confidence in them. So too, those international banks have confidence in our international consortium. I want to thank you very much.